Hello everyone. In this video I would like to tell you real quick my story with Panasonic GH5s camera, and I would like to provide you with a few practical and very specific tips to help you decide whether this camera is right for you. I eventually concluded that it wasn't the right camera for me, and therefore I traded it in for a different camera, and more on that in a few moments. And I will also talk about a few accessories that I really like, and in the end I will make a couple of general observations that I believe are very important for you to consider as factors when you decide which camera to buy, regardless of what kind of camera you get and regardless what kind of brand of camera you're going for. So I bought my GH5s about 6 months ago after watching a bunch of reviews where there were raving reviews about the camera's low light capabilities. I also became aware of the downsides of the camera, that it has low pixels, 10 point something pixels, and that it didn't have stabilization. But I also watched a few videos where people said that not having stabilization is not a big deal. So I liked my G85 that I had before, but I was really frustrated with the focusing issues. Many people know about these issues, so I decided to trade it in and I splurged on GH5s. I took that camera with me overseas to the Middle East. I wanted to make a few videos of city sights and mix it with an ambient music, and when I came back home I was really disappointed. Yes, the low light capabilities are great, the colors are good, the quality of the footage is good, but it was so shaky. I really tried to hold my camera as steady as I could when I was making those videos, and yet it still looked so amateurish. It literally drove me crazy. And I looked at gimbals, I looked at stabilizers. Some are more expensive than others, some are bigger than others. So at one point I brought a stabilizer with me, but come on, let's be real. Who wants to carry a stabilizer when you're traveling internationally? Who wants to deal with mounting your camera and adjusting it all the time when you when you extend the zoom or bring the zoom back, or when you switch lenses? Who has patience for that on short trips? Not mentioning that walking around in certain areas with a gimbal makes you look a little bit like a dork, or a lot. So wasn't a great solution. Eventually I came to the conclusion that GH5s was a great camera, but it wasn't for me, and here is why. Stabilization is very important. It's one of the most important things in a video camera. Some time ago I heard something that you guys probably all know, that the sound is much more important than the video. I didn't quite realize it until I heard it, but then it became so obvious to me. You know, the moment somebody switches from on-camera mic to a lavalier mic or a professional mic, everything changes. You start taking that video seriously. That video becomes much more engaging. We all know that. We want to hear the person speaking up close, not from far away. Well, guess what? I came to a similar conclusion with stabilization. Stabilization is more important than the quality of the video. You're better off having a smooth video without shaking, even if the frames per second, even if the resolution is slightly lower. So I looked at GH5, GH5s, G85, and I noticed that yes, GH5s, the low light capabilities are much better than G85, but between GH5 and GH5s the difference is not that significant, not for me anyway. Now, stabilization on the other hand was an absolute must for me. I didn't quite appreciate it when I bought the camera, but I started appreciating not having it when I started using it. Because think about it, if you don't have stabilization, the only good use for your camera is a stationary work, meaning where you're standing, where your camera is on a tripod, you're not moving, and you're recording a speech, a lecture, or an interview. Pretty much any other type of work. I don't care if it's weddings, shooting animals, videotaping different sites. Everywhere else you have to move around. You might not have to walk, but you have to move around, you know, at least in a circle. And that creates shaking. Without image stabilization, that will make your footage look so subpar and so substandard. So I realized that the slight difference in low light capabilities did not justify for me not having the IBs. And that's why I returned that camera, and I got a different camera a couple of, well, maybe a month ago that I am very happy with, and I would like to mention it today. And it's not GH5, it's a Panasonic G9 right here. And you may have heard it. And I really, really like this camera because it seems to be as close to a complete package as a camera can get. And let me just give you a couple of highlights. First of all, it has a screen right here. So all the information you can see on the screen when you turn on the camera. Not too many Panasonics have this. It has an excellent fully articulating screen right here, touch screen. Okay. It has an excellent large viewfinder right here. A lot of people complain that their camera doesn't have a microphone jack. Well, this camera does have a microphone jack right here. And it has a headphone jack. And it has a full-size HDMI port right here. It's really, really well made. Even though it's not supposed to be in the same class as GH5 and GH5s, it feels really solid. It feels just as good in your hands as GH5. And I immediately noticed that when I opened the SD compartment, this hinge right here, this large door is so well made, it's so tight. You could just tell that it's gonna last. You could tell that you can work with this camera over and over, push buttons, turn on and off, open and close SD and battery compartments, and it's gonna last. Oh, and it has a dual SD compartment. So it seems to have all the blessings. And in addition, the focus on this camera is noticeably better than on all the other Panasonics that I mentioned before. And it seems to me that with this camera, Panasonic resolved this annoying, lingering focusing issue. It seems to simply not be around anymore. The stabilization in this camera is excellent. You've got the megapixels here that GH5s doesn't have. So if you need to make nice, sharp photos, and if you need to enlarge them, this camera is the right camera for you. Now, with low light capabilities, it seems to be very similar. I didn't notice much difference between this camera and GH5s. I didn't look very closely, but it seems to be an excellent camera for low light as well. I have a 30mm stabilized 2.8 Panasonic lens on this camera. I have a bunch of lenses from other cameras that I have from G85, from GH5s, but today I have this lens, and I have another lens that I think is unique. I'm not sure, but there's something very unique about it, and that's the reason that I would highly recommend it, and that's Panasonic 45 to 175. Let's see. Oops. Here we go. Okay. So, what do I like about this this lens so much? First of all, the rings are very, very smooth. The focusing ring and the zoom ring are much smoother than on other lenses. Maybe it has something to do with the fact that this lens is made in Japan. Moreover, one thing that I absolutely love about this lens, and I wish that more lenses had, is a power zoom. So, if you use this lens for video, your zooming in and out is going to be much smoother than if you were just rotating, turning the rings yourself. And we all know that most rings are not that smooth. So having this power zoom is awesome. This lens is not very expensive. I will include the links on Amazon to every item that I'm talking about today. This lens is not very fast. It's 4.0 to 5.6, but this lens is probably best used in a good lighting during the day, and that's when it serves its purpose best. So I really like this this lens because of the smoothness of the ring and because of the power zoom. Not too many lenses, in fact, I don't know of any other lenses that have this power zoom on them. The next thing I would like to talk about is a grip. Really love the grip. This is an aftermarket newer grip, newer as in brand newer, not newer older. It seems to be of a very high quality. I've had Panasonic genuine grips, and this seems to be just as good for a fraction of the price. Besides providing extra grip and extra comfort, of course, what I love about these grips is that it allows you to continuously shoot much longer. And I've had these frustrating experiences before, especially with G85 that had a smaller battery. Now, this camera, another advantage, even though it's not GH5 or GH5s, it uses the same batteries, the same larger batteries. But what I like about the grip, the huge advantage is if you're recording something and you run out of battery in your grip and you have a full battery inside the body of your camera, you can pull out the battery from the grip, have your camera run for a few moments on its internal battery, and then switch the batteries without any interruption. This means that your footage can be lasting without interruption as long as your large SD cards allow you to, and as long as your internal battery can last based on just using it a couple of moments here and there when you're switching the batteries in your grip. I think most grips work like that, and that's one of the benefits of most grips, but this is huge if you're recording concerts where you don't want to miss a special moment, where you don't want to miss a special event, and it can be really frustrating, and this is an easy, cheap, and a cool solution. Let's see, is there something that I don't like about this camera? I'm trying to think about it. Let's see, so I haven't used it long enough to know all the functionality here. The only thing that I don't like all that much is the fact that the on and off button is right here. You switch, let's see, here we go. That's something I'm not used to on Panasonics. Usually the lever, on and off lever, is elsewhere. It's not a big deal. It didn't cause any problems to me. I just don't think that this is the most ideal place for on and off switch. I might be wrong. Maybe this is a good place for an on and off switch, and I just didn't come to appreciate the benefit of it. Okay. The last accessory I would like to talk about, and I would highly encourage you to consider it if you get this camera or GH5 or Sony a7 III or any camera of that size, is a bag that I got that I'm finally happy with for this camera. And I know many people are struggling to find the right size of bag for their GH5, for their a7 III. Some bags are too bulky, some are too small. We all want to have a travel bag of a high quality that allows us to put our camera, 2 or 3 lenses, charger, a few batteries, and maybe a few other accessories. And it seems to be not that easy to find that bag. And I finally found a bag that seems to be working just perfectly. And that bag is Lowepro Nova 180 AW. Here we go. So this is the bag. And I just love it. First of all, high quality bag. It's well made. If you've had anything by Lowepro, you know it's well made. And I just love the size. It's just perfect size for this camera. I removed one separator. There was another separator here. So I left one area for the camera and two of these areas for 2 extra lenses. So let me just show you how this camera sits here. So I can put this camera, and it seems to be fitting perfectly. Look, perfectly into this bag. Not too big and not too small. And then I just have one extra lens today, but I'll just show you how I put one lens in there, my 45-175 lens. And yeah, this is an excellent bag of a perfect size, not too small, not too big. Now, it has a very nice, very generous compartment for your charger. Tons of batteries you can fit here, I'm sure. Plenty of space right here. Then at the top cover you have this space where I'm just keeping my headphones here, and then you have a bunch of space for cards right here, You can put cards, and then you have a space here, I think, I don't know, for iPad or for maybe Kindle. There's another space right here, which you're probably familiar with if you bought any type of low pro bag, because they usually include it. And of course it comes with a waterproof, this water cover. I don't even know how to get it out, but oh, from underneath you can get it out. And then there's another compartment here, and that's in the back. I think you can put a bunch of small things like cleaning brushes or cloth or anything else in there. So excellent bag. I would highly recommend. And so this is Nova 180 AW. I thought that 160 AW was too small for this type of camera, and 200, Nova 200 was too big and also way more expensive, and I just didn't feel the need to spend that much on a bag, and I also didn't want something that bulky, unnecessarily bulky for this camera. So I would highly recommend that you check this bag out. Again, I'm going to include the links to everything in the description. And yep, now we are going to the final stage of this video. We need to talk about the big things that you need to keep in mind when you choose a camera. Like with diet, like with lifestyle, like with profession, with school, there isn't a perfect camera. You might have heard it before. There is a perfect camera for you. You need to ask yourself what's important to you. If image stabilization is as important to you as it is to me, because you like to walk around and make videos while on the move, then you should not be buying a camera that doesn't have the best stabilization possible. Because all the cameras do full HD, 4K, no 4K, whatever, 8 frames per second, fast shooting, 6 frames per second, who cares? The battery lasts for 2 hours or 2.5 hours, who cares? You need stabilization. If low light is very important to you and stabilization is very important to you, then you gotta find the right compromise between the two. If low light is absolutely the most important to you and you don't care about stabilization because you like to do time lapses in total darkness, or because you like to interview people in almost total darkness, then a camera like GH5s would be good for you, because low light is the most important and the only important thing to you. You need to ask yourself about the size of the camera. How important is the size of the camera to you? Are you gonna go out and take quick shots of the things you see around you that you're never gonna see again, and therefore you have to have your camera on you at all times ready to go? Well, if that's the case, if you're doing this quote-unquote accidental shooting, then you should go for a smaller camera, maybe like Canon G7X Mark II or Mark III or whatever, or equally small but sensitive camera. If you're gonna do an intentional shooting, meaning you know that you're going somewhere for a specific purpose of making videos, then you can get a larger camera, such as the one that I'm videotaping right now, which is Canon M50, or ideally you want to go with something like G9, because it's still not very big, it's not heavy, you can carry it around, it's not Canon's, I don't know, 1DX, it's not a Nikon D850 with a big lens, so you're not going to be tired carrying G9. It's not a very heavy camera. So ask yourself, truly close your eyes and ask yourself how exactly you're going to use your camera and what's important to you. Don't buy a camera just because it's cool, or just because it's the newest thing, or just because it has the highest resolution, if it's lacking in features that are very important to you. I made that mistake. It's probably, I don't know, $500 to $1,000 mistake. I'm making this video to make sure that you do not make the same mistake. GH5s is an excellent camera. It's not the camera for me. I would ask Panasonic. I don't like conspiracies. I don't believe that companies do things on purpose to squeeze money out of people. Maybe I'm too naive, but I would ask them, how do you make a $2,000, $2,500 camera that's supposed to be professional, that's supposed to be giving this high-end functionality, and you don't include some type of stabilization? Doesn't seem right to me, but it is what it is. So this is what I want you to think about when you are buying a camera. Thank you.